She said she wanted the best for me, but tried to ruin my relationship. Some friendships are like beautiful gardens that hide poisonous roots beneath the surface. They bloom with promises of loyalty and care, yet slowly strangle everything precious in your life. This is the story of one such friendship, one that nearly cost me the love of my life, and taught me that sometimes the people who claim to want the best for you are the very ones plotting your downfall. Hello, my name is Imogen Hartwell, and I'm about to tell you the most painful yet enlightening story of my life. It's about betrayal wrapped in the prettiest packaging, about manipulation disguised as concern, and about how I almost lost everything because I trusted the wrong person completely. At 25, I was working as a junior architect in London, living in a cozy Notting Hill flat, and genuinely believing life was falling into place. I had always been the type who saw the best in others, perhaps to a fault. My story begins on a rainy Thursday evening when I walked into the Laughing Dog, a quaint Kensington pub. I wasn't looking for love, just nursing a pint and scrolling through work emails after a brutal presentation. That's when I noticed him. Sitting alone at the bar was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. Not conventionally handsome, but beautiful in a raw, authentic way that made my heart skip beats. Dark, disheveled hair and the most striking green eyes I'd ever encountered. Before I could talk myself out of it, I found myself walking over. "Rough day?" I asked, gesturing to his nearly empty whiskey. When those green eyes met mine, I felt something fundamental shift in my chest. "You could say that," he replied, his slight northern accent making my knees weak. "I'm Jasper, by the way. Jasper Thornfield." "Imogen, mind if I join you?" That simple conversation stretched into hours, covering everything from obscure indie films to Victorian architecture. By closing time, I knew I was in trouble, the good kind. Jasper was a documentary photographer specializing in remote locations worldwide. He just returned from Nepal, documenting climate change's effects on mountain communities. His passion was infectious, and watching his eyes light up when discussing his work made me fall in love with him right there at the bar. We exchanged numbers that night, and by the following weekend, we were inseparable. Now let me introduce you to the other main character in this twisted tale, my best friend, or so I thought at the time. Penelope Ashworth Clark had been my closest friend since university. We'd met during Freshers' Week at UCL, bonding over Gothic literature and our mutual inability to navigate the London underground without getting lost. She was everything I wasn't, effortlessly glamorous, confidently outspoken, and possessed of the kind of posh accent that could open doors I didn't even know existed. Pen came from old money, the kind of family with ancestral portraits dating back to the Crusades. Her father was something important in the city. Her mother organized charity galas for fashionable causes. Pen worked in PR for a high-end fashion brand, attending exclusive events and maintaining her extensive social media presence. Despite our different backgrounds, we'd been thick as thieves for 7 years. She was the sister I'd never had, the person I called for advice, comfort, or wine-fueled complaints about life's injustices. I trusted her implicitly, which makes what happened next all the more devastating. When I told Pen about Jasper, her reaction was interesting, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. "Darling, how wonderful!" she exclaimed, but there was something in her voice, a slight strain, a forced quality that I attributed to surprise rather than something more sinister. "Tell me absolutely everything. Leave out no detail." So I did. I gushed about our first date, dinner at a tiny Italian restaurant where Jasper charmed the elderly owner by speaking fluent Italian, our long walks along the Thames discussing philosophy and art, and the way he made me laugh until my sides hurt. I told her about his travels, his work, his dreams of opening a gallery to showcase photography from underrepresented communities. Pen listened to all of this with what I interpreted as genuine interest and happiness for me. She asked all the right questions, made all the appropriate sounds of excitement, and even insisted on meeting him as soon as possible. "Any man who's captured my Imogen's heart deserves the full Penelope Ashworth Clark inspection," she declared with that laugh I'd always found so charming. "Bring him to drinks this Friday." I simply must meet this photographer who's turned my sensible best friend into a giggling schoolgirl. I should have noticed the slight emphasis she placed on the word photographer, the way she said it like it left a bad taste in her mouth. I should have picked up on the subtle condescension in her tone when she called me sensible, as if falling in love was somehow beneath me. But I was too happy, too caught up in the golden glow of new love, to notice the warning signs. Here's where Penelope begins to show her true colors, though I was still too blind to see them. The following Friday, I brought Jasper to meet Pen at the Ivy. I was nervous but excited. Two of the most important people in my life were finally going to meet. Jasper looked gorgeous that evening in a simple black shirt that brought out his eyes, paired with dark jeans and his signature leather jacket. Pen arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked stunning as always, and I felt that familiar pang of inadequacy. "Imogen, darling," she air-kissed me. "And you must be Jasper." She extended her hand with that practiced smile. The evening progressed well initially. Jasper held his own in conversation, asked about her work, complimented her appropriately, and laughed at her jokes. But I began noticing subtle shifts in Pen's behavior. When Jasper mentioned his upcoming Nepal exhibition, she tilted her head with apparent concern. "How adventurous," she said, her tone suggesting adventurous wasn't positive. "And this pays well. Photography can be quite unpredictable." "It's not about money," Jasper laughed. "It's about telling necessary stories. Though I do well enough." "How wonderfully bohemian," Pen replied with an edge. "Though stability becomes important as one gets older, doesn't it? When thinking about settling down." The rest of the evening passed without incident, but something had shifted. After Jasper left for the restroom, Pen leaned forward with false excitement. "Darling, he's absolutely gorgeous. Those eyes, that jawline." "But," prompted. "But nothing, sweetheart. I just want you thinking with your head as well as your heart. Men like that, they're often not the settling down type. All that traveling, the artistic temperament. I'd hate to see you hurt." "Pen, you've known him for 3 hours. I know. I'm probably being overly cautious. It's just that you're at such a crucial point in your career, and sometimes these passionate affairs can be distracting." When Jasper returned to the table, the conversation moved to lighter topics, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Pen had planted seeds of doubt that she fully intended to water and nurture in the weeks to come. This is where Penelope's true nature starts to reveal itself, though I was still too trusting to recognize her manipulations for what they were. In the weeks following their meeting, Pen launched what I now recognize as a carefully orchestrated campaign to undermine my relationship. But at the time, it felt like caring concern from a devoted friend. It started small, a comment here, a suggestion there, all delivered with perfect love and worry. "Darling, I was thinking about Jasper's unpredictable work," she'd say during coffee dates. "Have you considered what that might mean long-term? Buying a house, starting a family. His income is so variable." "We're nowhere near that stage," I'd protest, but anxiety would sprout in my chest. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm just thinking practically. You've worked so hard professionally. It would be tragic if you had to compromise because of financial instability." She had an arsenal of cautionary tales. Friends who'd chosen passion over practicality and ended up struggling, versus those who'd chosen stability and found lasting happiness. It was propaganda disguised as conversation, and it was working. Here's where Pen's manipulations began to have their desired effect, creating the first real problems in my relationship with Jasper. About 2 months into our relationship, Jasper received an offer that would change everything. A prestigious magazine wanted him to spend 3 weeks in Madagascar, documenting the island's unique ecosystems and the communities that depended on them. It was the kind of assignment that could make his career high-profile, well-paid, and aligned with his passion for environmental storytelling. When he told me about the opportunity, his excitement was palpable. His eyes lit up as he described the project, the rare species he'd have the chance to photograph, the stories he could tell. My initial reaction was pure joy for him. This was what he lived for, what made him the passionate, driven man I'd fallen in love with. But then Pen's voice crept into my head. Men like that, they're often not the settling down type. 3 weeks is a long time, I heard myself saying, and I immediately hated how small and needy I sounded. Jasper's expression shifted slightly. It's not that long, love. And think of the opportunities this could open up. This could lead to more assignments, better pay, more stability. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here he was, talking about stability, something Pen had convinced me to value above all else, and yet I felt resentful about the very thing that could provide it. Of course, I said quickly, forcing a smile. I'm being silly. This is wonderful news. But the damage was done. Doubt had crept into our paradise, and Jasper could sense it. When I told Pen about the Madagascar assignment, her reaction was perfectly calculated. 3 weeks, she said, raising an eyebrow. Well, I suppose it's good that you're finding out now what your relationship will really be like. Imagine if you were married or had children. Would he still take off for weeks at a time? It's his job, Pen, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I know, darling. I'm not criticizing. I'm just... Well, you know me. Think about these things. Long-distance relationships are difficult enough without adding career demands that require extended travel. And Madagascar isn't exactly next door, is it? The time difference alone. She let the implications hang in the air, knowing that my imagination would fill in the blanks better than any direct statement could. The night before Jasper left for Madagascar, we had our first real fight. It started over something completely trivial. He'd forgotten to pick up milk on his way over, but it escalated into something much bigger. Are you having second thoughts about us? He asked directly, his green eyes searching my face. Because you've seemed distant lately, and now with this trip. I'm not having second thoughts, I lied. I wonder sometimes if we want the same things. What do you mean? I could hear Pen's words pouring out of my mouth. I mean, what does this look like in 5 years? Will you still be taking assignments that keep you away for weeks at a time? What if we wanted to buy a house together or start a family? How would that work with your lifestyle? Jasper was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. Imogen, we've been together for 2 months. I thought we were just enjoying getting to know each other. I didn't realize you were planning our entire future. I'm not planning anything, I snapped. I'm just trying to be realistic about whether this relationship has any real potential. Realistic, he repeated, and I could hear the hurt in his voice. That's an interesting word choice. We went to bed that night without resolving anything, and he left for the airport the next morning with a coolness between us that had never existed before. While Jasper was in Madagascar, Pen intensified her campaign, using the distance between us as ammunition for her arguments about our incompatibility. The first week of Jasper's trip was difficult for both of us. The time difference meant that our communication was limited to brief text messages and the occasional call when our schedules aligned. The calls themselves were strained. I could hear the hurt in his voice from our fight, and I was too proud to admit that I'd let someone else's doubts poison my own feelings. Pen was my constant companion during this time, something I was initially grateful for. She took me out to dinners, invited me to gallery openings, and made sure I was never alone with my thoughts for too long. I thought she was being a good friend, helping me through a difficult time. I didn't realize she was orchestrating every moment to maximize my doubt and loneliness. How are you holding up, darling? She asked during one of our dinners. You look tired. Are you sleeping properly? It's just hard, I admitted. I miss him more than I expected to. Of course you do. But isn't it interesting that this is what missing him feels like? I mean, this is just 3 weeks. Imagine if this was your life, never knowing when he'd be home, always waiting for the next assignment to take him away. She had a way of twisting my natural feelings of missing him into evidence of fundamental incompatibility. When I mentioned that I was proud of the photographs he was posting on social media, She redirected the conversation to how his success would likely mean more opportunities for travel. Success in his field means more time away, doesn't it? She mused. It's rather cruel, really. The better he does, the less you'll see of him. But Penn's most effective manipulation came in the form of alternative options. Suddenly, her life was full of single, successful men who seemed perfect for me. I met the most charming man at lunch today, she would say. He's a solicitor, absolutely brilliant, and he mentioned he'd love to meet someone like you. Someone intelligent and grounded. Or, you remember my cousin Rupert, the one who works in finance. He's just gotten back from living in Hong Kong, and he's looking to settle down properly. He asked about you specifically when I mentioned you were dating someone who travels frequently. These weren't random observations. They were strategic offerings, alternatives designed to make me question whether I was settling for uncertainty when I could have security. The most damaging conversation came during the second week of Jasper's trip. I'd just gotten off a particularly difficult call with him. The connection was poor, we could barely hear each other, and we'd ended up frustrated rather than connected. This is impossible, I told Penn, nearly in tears. I feel like I'm trying to have a relationship with a ghost. Oh, sweetheart, she said, wrapping her arms around me in a hug that felt like salvation. This is exactly what I was worried about. You're such a loving, devoted person, and you deserve someone who can be present for that love. Someone who's here, who can build something real with you instead of just visiting your life between adventures. But I love him, I whispered. I know you do. But love isn't always enough, is it? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is recognize when two people want different things from life. That night, I lay awake wondering if Penn was right. Was I trying to force something that was fundamentally incompatible? Was love enough to bridge the gap between my need for stability and his need for adventure? By the time Jasper returned from Madagascar, I had convinced myself that we needed to have a serious conversation about our future. I had let Penn's doubts become my own, and I was ready to demand guarantees about a future that neither of us could predict. This is where my own actions, influenced by Penn's manipulations, nearly destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to me. Jasper came back from Madagascar transformed by his experience. His eyes held new stories, his camera roll was full of breathtaking images, and his excitement about the project was infectious. Or it should have been, if I hadn't spent 3 weeks letting Penn poison my mind against everything his work represented. He greeted me at the airport with flowers and a smile that could have lit up London, but I found myself studying his face for signs of distance or change rather than simply enjoying his return. I missed you so much, he said, pulling me into his arms. Every sunrise I photographed, I wanted to share with you. Every incredible thing I saw, I thought about how I'd describe it to you when I got home. I should have melted. I should have kissed him and told him I'd missed him too, that I was proud of his work, that I couldn't wait to see his photographs. Instead, I heard myself saying, "We need to talk." The words hung between us like a death sentence, and I watched his face change from joy to wariness in a matter of seconds. We went back to his flat, and I can still remember how the afternoon light filtered through his windows, illuminating the dust motes in the air like tiny dancing ghosts. He made tea while I sat on his sofa, rehearsing the speech that Penn had helped me craft over the past 3 weeks. How was Madagascar really? I asked when he sat down beside me. Incredible. Life-changing. I got some shots that I think could win awards, and the magazine is already talking about a follow-up assignment. But Imogen, you seem different. What's going on? I took a deep breath and launched into what I now recognize as the most destructive conversation of my life. While you were gone, I did a lot of thinking about us, about what we want from life. And I'm not sure we're as compatible as we thought. Jasper set down his teacup very carefully. What do you mean? I mean, this is what our life would be like if we stay together. You traveling for weeks at a time, me waiting at home, trying to maintain a relationship through bad phone connections and text messages. Is that really what you want? Imogen, it was 3 weeks. This time. But what about next time? And the time after that? Your success means more opportunities to travel, doesn't it? I watched him process my words, and I could see the exact moment when he realized this wasn't just about the Madagascar trip. This was about everything. What are you really asking me? He said quietly. I'm asking if you're willing to make some changes. To maybe focus on local work, assignments that don't require extended travel. I'm asking if you're ready to prioritize our relationship over your career. The words felt foreign in my mouth, like I was speaking a language I'd learned but didn't understand. This wasn't who I was. I'd never been the type of woman to ask a man to change his dreams for me. But Pen's voice was so strong in my head, her arguments so logical, her concern so convincing. Jasper was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the London skyline. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, sadder, more distant. You're asking me to be someone else, he said. You're asking me to give up the work that makes me who I am, the work that brought us together in the first place. I'm asking you to grow up, I snapped, and immediately hated myself for it. I'm asking you to think about building something real instead of just chasing the next adventure. This is real to me, he said. My work is real. The stories I tell are real. The difference I make through my photography is real. And I thought what we had was real too. But apparently, you need me to prove it by sacrificing everything that makes me myself. We stared at each other across a chasm that had opened up in the space of a single conversation. I could feel him slipping away from me, and instead of fighting for him, I doubled down on Pen's script. If you can't even consider making some compromises for our relationship, then maybe we don't have as much of a future as I thought. Jasper stood up slowly, as if his body ached. Maybe we don't. He walked me to the door, and we stood there for a moment, both of us knowing that something fundamental had broken between us. Imogen, he said softly, I love you. I love you exactly as you are, and I never asked you to change anything about yourself for me. I just wish you could extend me the same courtesy. I left his flat that afternoon with tears streaming down my face, convinced that I'd done the right thing but feeling like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. In the aftermath of my ultimatum, Pen revealed more of her true nature while pretending to comfort me through the heartbreak I'd created. Jasper and I limped through another 2 weeks of half-hearted attempts at reconciliation before we finally admitted that the trust between us had been shattered beyond repair. The breakup, when it finally came, was devastating in its civility. No screaming, no dramatic pronouncements, just two people who loved each other acknowledging that love wasn't enough to bridge the gap that had opened between us. I hope you find what you're looking for, he said when we met for the last time, returning each other's belongings in a coffee shop that had once been the scene of so much happiness between us. I hope you do too, I replied, though I wasn't even sure what I was looking for anymore. Pen naturally was there to pick up the pieces. She arrived at my flat within an hour of my text telling her it was over, armed with expensive wine, chocolate, and a seemingly endless supply of comfort. Oh, darling, she said, wrapping me in her arms as I sobbed into her shoulder. I know it hurts now, but you've done the right thing. You've chosen yourself, chosen your future. That takes courage. For the next several weeks, Pen was everything a best friend should be. She took me out to distract me from my grief, listened to me cry about Jasper for hours without complaint, and constantly reassured me that I'd made the right decision. But looking back, I can see how she was also shaping the narrative of my breakup, ensuring that I understood it in terms that served her purposes. You gave him a chance to choose you, she would say. The fact that he couldn't make that choice tells you everything you need to know about his priorities. When I expressed doubt about whether I'd been too harsh, she was quick to remind me of all her concerns about our compatibility. Sweetheart, remember how miserable you were while he was in Madagascar? That was just 3 weeks. Imagine living like that for years. She had an endless supply of stories about friends who'd made similar choices, women who'd ended relationships with artistic types, and gone on to find stability and happiness with more traditional partners. My friend Victoria broke up with that musician she was dating, remember? She was devastated at the time, but now she's engaged to a lovely doctor, and she says she can't imagine how different her life would have been if she'd stayed with someone so unreliable. What I didn't realize was that Penn was already working on phase 2 of her plan, introducing me to someone she considered more suitable. "I don't want to push," she said about a month after the breakup, "but there's someone I'd really like you to meet. He's a friend of my brother's, absolutely lovely, and he's specifically looking for someone serious about settling down." "Penn, I'm not ready." I know. But sometimes the best way to get over someone is to remember that there are other wonderful people out there. Just drinks, nothing serious. Think of it as practice getting back out there. His name was Theodore Brightwell Smith, and he was everything Penn thought I should want. Successful, stable, from a good family, and completely predictable. He worked in investment banking, lived in a gorgeous flat in Chelsea that he owned outright, and had a 5-year plan that included marriage, children, and a house in the countryside. He was also one of the most boring people I'd ever met. But Penn was relentless in her enthusiasm for him. "He's perfect for you, darling. Can't you see it? He's ready to commit, financially secure, and he absolutely adores you already." After a few dates with Theodore, I began to suspect that Penn had been talking to him about me extensively before we'd even met. He seemed to know things about my preferences and my past that I hadn't shared with him, and his conversation felt scripted, as if he'd been coached on what to say to win me over. Still, I tried to give him a chance. After all, he represented everything Penn had convinced me I should value. But sitting across from him at dinner, listening to him explain his investment strategies or his plans for our potential future together, I couldn't help but think about Jasper. I thought about how Jasper's eyes lit up when he talked about his work, how he could make me laugh until my sides ached, how he saw beauty and stories everywhere he looked. Theodore saw everything in terms of profit margins and social status. The comparison was painful, but I pushed it down. I had made my choice, and I needed to live with it. This is where I finally began to see through Penn's manipulations, though the full extent of her betrayal was still to be revealed. 3 months after my breakup with Jasper, I was having coffee with another friend from university, someone I hadn't seen in a while. Felicity had known both Penn and me since our student days, but she'd moved to Edinburgh after graduation and we'd lost touch somewhat. We were catching up on our lives when she mentioned seeing some photos from Jasper's Madagascar exhibition online. "Your photographer friend's work is incredible," she said casually. "That series from Madagascar is absolutely breathtaking. He must be thrilled with the response it's getting." I felt my chest tighten. "What response?" "Oh, you haven't seen. The exhibition's been extended twice because of demand, and there's talk of a book deal. The Guardian did this lovely piece about him last week, calling him one of the most important documentary photographers of his generation." I tried to keep my voice steady. That's wonderful for him." But Felicity was studying my face with concern. "Imogen, are you all right? You've gone quite pale." "I'm fine. We're not together anymore, actually. We broke up a few months ago." "Oh, I'm so sorry. Had no idea. What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" I found myself recounting the story I'd told so many times, about incompatible life goals, about his travel schedule, about my need for stability. But as I spoke the words aloud to someone who hadn't been involved in the situation, they sounded different. Hollow. Like excuses rather than reasons. Felicity listened with a thoughtful expression, and when I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "That's so strange," she said finally. "What do you mean?" "Well, it's just... When I knew Jasper at uni, he talked about you all the time. Even then, he was already planning how he might balance his career with a serious relationship. He mentioned wanting to focus more on UK-based projects eventually, maybe teaching workshops, opening a gallery. He seemed to have it all figured out." My heart stopped. "What do you mean, when you knew Jasper at uni?" Felicity looked confused. "At UCL. He was in his final year when we were in our second year. Didn't you know that? He was studying art history with a focus on photography. I thought that's how you met him originally." The world tilted around me. "No, I met him at a pub. I didn't know he'd gone to UCL." "Oh, that's odd. He definitely went to UCL. I remember because he was dating Penn's roommate for a while. What was her name? Georgina. They were quite serious actually, until she cheated on him with that rugby player. Everything stopped. The coffee shop, the conversation, my breathing. Everything just stopped. Did you say Penn's roommate? Yes, Georgina Mitchell. Lovely girl, terrible decision-making when it came to men. Penn was furious about the whole situation actually. She really liked Jasper, said Georgina was mad to throw away someone so genuine and talented. Why? What's wrong? I couldn't speak. The implications were crashing over me like waves, each one more devastating than the last. Imogen. Felicity reached across the table, touching my hand. You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to go, I managed, standing up so quickly I knocked over my coffee cup. Wait, what's? But I was already grabbing my coat, my mind racing as pieces of a horrible puzzle began falling into place. Penn had known Jasper before I met him. She had known about his university education, his plans, his character, and she had never said a word. I practically ran home, my thoughts spinning. Once in my flat, I began going through old photos, text messages, anything that might reveal the truth I was beginning to suspect. And then I found it. A group photo from Felicity's birthday party 3 years ago. In the background, barely visible, were Penn and Jasper talking intently by the window. My hands were shaking as I called Jasper. Imogen. His voice was surprised but warm. How are you? Did you know Penn before I introduced you to her? There was a long pause. What? At university. Did you know Penn at UCL? Another pause, longer this time. Yes. Why are you asking? Why didn't you tell me? Because she asked me not to. She said it would be awkward, that she didn't want our past to complicate your friendship with her. Imogen, what's this about? My world crumbled completely. What past? We dated for about 6 months in university. It ended badly. She was quite controlling actually. She wanted me to give up photography, said it wasn't a real career. When I wouldn't change my plans, she became vindictive. She turned a lot of our mutual friends against me, spread rumors about my character. It was a difficult time. I sank into my chair, the full scope of Penn's betrayal finally clear. She hadn't been protecting me from an unsuitable man. She had been preventing me from having the happiness she'd been denied. Imogen, are you there? She destroyed us, I whispered. She knew exactly what to say to make me doubt everything we had because she'd tried the same manipulation with you years ago. What are you talking about? Through tears I told him everything. Every conversation, every doubt she'd planted, every piece of advice that had driven us apart. As I spoke, I could hear him putting the pieces together too. She knew my triggers, he said quietly. She knew that being asked to choose between love and my work would terrify me because she'd done the same thing to me before. And she knew I'd be vulnerable to concerns about stability because she'd been my friend long enough to know my insecurities. We were both quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what had been done to us. Jasper, I said finally. I am so sorry. I should have trusted what we had instead of listening to someone else's fears disguised as wisdom. I'm sorry too. I should have told you about my history with Penn from the beginning, regardless of what she asked. Where does this leave us? There was another pause, and when he spoke, his voice was careful but hopeful. I don't know. We both said things, made choices that hurt each other. But Imogen, I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. I never stopped loving you either. This is where I finally faced Penn and reclaimed my life, my choices and my happiness. The next day, I went to Penn's flat. She greeted me with her usual air-kissed enthusiasm, but I could see wariness in her eyes. Darling, what a lovely surprise. I was just about to call you actually. Theodore mentioned that you seemed a bit distant on your last date, and I thought, I know about Jasper, I said quietly. Her perfect composure cracked for just a moment before reassembling itself. What about Jasper? I know you dated him at university. I know you asked him not to tell me. I know everything. For a few seconds we stared at each other in silence. Then Pen sighed and walked to her window, her back to me. I suppose you think I'm some sort of monster. I think you're someone who let her own pain turn her into a person who destroys other people's happiness. She turned around, and for the first time in 7 years of friendship, I saw her without her mask. The vulnerability, the jealousy, the deep insecurity she'd hidden behind privilege and polish. Do you have any idea what it was like? She said, her voice shaking. Watching you fall in love with him, watching him look at you the way he never looked at me. He chose his precious photography over me, but he would have given it all up for you if you just asked him properly. That's not true, isn't it? You gave him an ultimatum and he walked away. But I saw how he looked at you, Imogen. If you'd approached it differently, if you'd talked to him instead of demanding he choose. I realized she was right, and that made her betrayal even more devastating. She had destroyed something that could have worked, something beautiful and real, out of jealousy and spite. You used everything you knew about both of us to tear us apart, I said. You manipulated me into becoming someone I'm not, and you nearly cost me the love of my life. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself from seeing me have what you couldn't have with him. Pen's composure finally shattered completely. You're right, she whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But Imogen, it's too late now. You broke up months ago. He's probably moved on, found someone new. You can't undo what's been done. But she was wrong. Love, real love, doesn't die easily. And sometimes, when two people are brave enough to fight for what they've lost, they can find their way back to each other. I left Pen's flat and went straight to Jasper's exhibition. I stood in front of his Madagascar photographs, seeing them properly for the first time. The beauty, the storytelling, the passion that made him who he was. And I realized that I didn't want him to change. I wanted him to be exactly who he was, and I wanted to build a life that honored both of our dreams. He found me there an hour later, standing in front of a photograph of a sunset over the Madagascan highlands. It's beautiful, I said without turning around. It is, he agreed, moving to stand beside me. But it's not the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I looked at him then, this man I'd loved and lost and was hoping desperately to love again. Jasper, I want to try again. But differently this time. I don't want to change you, and I don't want you to change me. I want us to figure out how to build something together that honors who we both are. He took my hand and I felt like I could breathe properly for the first time in months. I'd like that too, he said. More than anything. 6 months later we were engaged. We had a small ceremony in a country church, surrounded by people who truly wanted the best for us. Pen wasn't invited, though I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to New York, supposedly for a new job, but really, I think, to escape the consequences of her actions. Today, 3 years later, Jasper and I have built the life we both dreamed of. He still travels for his work, but we've found ways to make it work for both of us. Sometimes I join him on shorter assignments, and he's developed a thriving business in London doing portraits and teaching workshops. We have a flat filled with his photographs from around the world and plans for the family we want to start soon. But most importantly, we have trust. We have open communication. And we've learned that the most dangerous threats to love often come disguised as friendship and concern. I learned that some people will use your insecurities against you, that they'll plant seeds of doubt in the name of caring for you, that they'll sabotage your happiness if they can't have their own. But I also learned that real love can survive even the most determined attacks against it, as long as both people are willing to fight for what they have. Pen taught me that not everyone who claims to want the best for you actually does. But Jasper taught me that when someone truly loves you, they love all of you. Your dreams, your ambitions, your flaws, and your strengths. They don't ask you to choose between love and the things that make you who you are. And that, I've learned, makes all the difference in the world.